Yeah, I think Hans, Albert, I think we're good. Maybe should we get started?
Yep, I think so. Why don't we go ahead and kick off, and then others can join as we're probably in the beginning. So.
Perfect. Okay, well, thank you, everyone. Thanks again for dialing in. And just before we get started, a couple of ground rules or some insights that will help you enjoy your webinar more. Once again, I'm Abhishek Ratna, the marketing manager at KPIT. In today's session, we'll explore the why and the how of Varian Medical Systems experience with adopting SAP ERP on HANA. Now, Varian Medical is a global leader in manufacturing medical devices. So in this presentation today, we will start by talking about SAP HANA and how it has evolved. Then we will dive into Varian's journey. Our speakers today are Jason Jester, Application Manager at Varian Medical, and Hans Tosche, Director of HANA Solutions at KPIT. Before leaving you in their very capable hands, I request that you mute yourself during the session because we are recording it. If you have a question, you can use the chat panel here in your GoToWebinar app, and or you can even, if you look at the audience or the attendees panel, you have an option to click on the hand icon, where if you have a question, you can raise your hand. So I request you to use these tools, the chat window and the hand icon, to ask any questions you might have during the session. And with that said, I hope you enjoy today's session, and we will open up the session to questions and answers at the end of the webinar, so please stay tuned in. All right, thank you. Over to you, Hans.
Thank you. Thank you all for your attendance, and thank you, Abhishek, for the introductions. My name is Hans Tosche. As briefly mentioned by Abhishek, we will cover in this webinar the business value of HANA through a sample of KPIT's HANA projects and the underlying customer use cases. And we'll zoom in specifically on the ongoing ECC Business Suite on HANA project at Varian Medical Systems, which Jason and I that will co-present that particular section. And in closing, I will also provide you with a value proposition on how KPIT HANA practice can help you on your roadmap to a specific business transformation and leveraging the HANA technology. So if you go to the next slide, please. So while there's a lot of marketing information available around HANA, the platform itself from a technology perspective, the various technical solutions, to start off this webinar, I would like to let the benefits on HANA be told through a sample of use cases. I'm sorry, can you go to the previous slide again, Abhishek? So I want to cover some of the benefits through the use cases that KPIT has undertaken over the past 2.5 years. That way you can hopefully appreciate why certain companies opted for HANA, the benefits they're achieving from it today. Slide 5. So while what we're seeing is that for every specific customer, every specific HANA project, there's always a specific underlying business case that warrants the investment. If I may categorize some of the main drivers that we're seeing in the market towards the needs for HANA, one would consider the following 3 main trends. The first one would truly be the explosion of data volume. And a lot has been written already around the multiplication of data. There is obviously the sheer volume of data, the size of the enterprise data that's leading to IT and business challenges, making sense of the information and truly uncovering the business value of it. But what I would like to add to that statement is also that in order to truly get the benefits, the true benefits from the data and the information, that this analysis has to happen within a reasonable decision window. So that's one trend that we're seeing in the market. Additionally, there's also the introductions of new types of data. Currently, technology is challenged in attempting to capture, process, and analyze new data types. This includes aspects such as machine, device, sensor data, social media sources, unstructured text, images, and I'll further expand on this through some sample KPIT projects over the next few slides. The third trend I would highlight is that there's a need for faster access. Increasing needs and expectations from business users for faster, more immediate, and in some cases, real-time access to information for decision making is really driving towards the need for HANA. So one could say that the data and information processing is at a critical inflection point, and point optimization that was attempted in the past is no longer enough to achieve a real-time business. With HANA, you definitely have the means to meet those challenges of today and also for the future by providing that high-speed, fast response times, allowing for interactivity between the user and the system without the need for any data preparation, no pre-aggregates, and HANA can truly manage the different data types on large amounts of data, as well as manage the complex queries that will be executed on granular data. In essence, the time becomes your competitive advantage. Let's go to the next slide. So if one were to review the various HANA solutions from a setup or application perspective, these can be largely categorized as follows. And if you keep building the slide, Abhishek, the first one would be the HANA as a platform with an agile data mart connected with BI for acceleration of analytics on high-performance data source. While the second one would be the business warehouse on HANA, with one of the early platforms that was available on HANA, allowing for fast data loading, decreased data latency between your business applications and your business warehouse, and resulting in improved decision making, and also moving towards a more self-service model for businesses to access all the information at a granular level. Third one would be the business suite on HANA, the various applications such as ECC, CRM, SRM, etc., which are now all available on the HANA platform. Fourth, the real-time apps on HANA. There are a wide variety of apps specifically designed for the HANA platform, whether they relate to enterprise applications and a specific line of business, such as customer intelligence apps, sense and response, planning and optimizing, or even apps for specific customer applications. And then the last area I would say would be the HANA cloud solutions. So while at the core of these architectural diagrams and solutions, there is obviously the HANA database, but to say that HANA is just another database, and I'll let the graphics speak for themselves, there's definitely more to it. HANA includes a database with significant complementary technology around it. It is truly a fundamental game changer, and it will impact most areas of IT. With SAP HANA, the platform itself encompasses the database, but also data processing, and application platform capabilities, and providing libraries for predictive, planning, tax, spatial, and business analytics. So businesses can truly operate in real time. If you go to the next slide. I'll share a brief high-level overview of KPIT, formerly Sparta Consulting, towards the end of the presentation, time permitting. But the key message I want to mention here around the KPIT HANA practice is that we are a global organization with over 100 dedicated HANA practitioners, and we've done numerous HANA projects across the various HANA solutions that I just mentioned. Definitely have the experience from the early days onwards, over 2 years, and we collaborate closely with SAP on new technology and innovations, and have also developed our own HANA IP, some of which I'll further elaborate on during this section related to the Varian Suite on HANA project and what we've used during that project. Next slide. So over the next few slides, I would like to give you some examples of interesting use cases. These are samples from our KPIT HANA projects. The first two, the one you're seeing right here, is a BW on HANA use case for a company in the Bay Area, an early adopter of HANA technology, and BW on HANA was obviously one of the early HANA platforms that was available. The challenges with this company was that the global users, over 7,000 in total, were accessing the same database, the same platform. It was outdated. They had issues with planning as well as reporting, and they were looking at HANA to provide the means to reduce data latency and give the users the information that they need for real-time decision making. If you click on the next slide, please. The second scenario, also related to BW on HANA, is from a challenges perspective is similar. This was a company more in the automotive ecosystem. Also had challenges with the retail stores, siloed individual databases that were being brought up for performance purposes, but resulting in a lack of a single source of truth. Additionally here, and I'd like to use this as an example because this is what we're seeing quite often, is that we initially engaged with the client and worked with them to understand what the real pain points are, the business challenges, looked at their, not just from a business perspective, understood what the target operating model was, but also looked at their infrastructure. So truly did an overall assessment performed a strategic BI 360 assessment and laid out the groundwork for a roadmap, which then ultimately resulted in a BW on HANA type project. And this is something that we're seeing quite often happen, that companies are looking for advice, recommendations, and then HANA becomes part of that overall strategic roadmap. Next slide. The next example is in the Suite on HANA sphere. First one being ECC on HANA. This was for a manufacturing company. Also ECC on HANA, similar to what Varian has deployed, where we did a POC for them and helping them to evaluate further the business value that they can obtain from HANA. I've also included another example on the next slide around CRM on HANA. So it's definitely not just ECC that is of interest within the business suite sphere. This is a sample from a company in the cosmetics personal care industry where they're running CRM. They had challenges doing certain campaigns that they're running, that the order volume increased to about 2,000 orders a minute, which forced them to decouple the web front end from the back end database. And by introducing HANA, it allowed them to streamline the end-to-end process. They didn't need to decouple the front end from the back end, really giving them business value and the means to operate in a fully integrated environment. Next slide. In addition to the database-related aspects of HANA itself, I also wanted to include and mention the capabilities and the functionality available with HANA Live, providing that semantic layer through which data can be consumed by BI applications, mobile apps, etc., directly pulling data through the HANA Live from the underlying tables. So giving the means for real-time analytics, and some of the newer apps that have come out are taking advantage of those capabilities. So HANA, Suite on HANA, HANA Live, and then the extension into mobility is definitely an area that we're seeing a lot of business value from, and there's a lot of interest in the market. Next slide. There are 2 or 3 more slides and use cases that I want to mention. This next one is for a company in the telecom industry, basically evaluating a couple of use cases, what would be most valuable for their company. The first one was an accelerator, so using HANA as a platform. You know, the way it was typically done at the very early stages, the acceleration of a profitability analysis and then reporting off of this. The second one is a POC for the analysis of text, unstructured data. So this company was interested to know more about the interaction of their customer service department with a large pool of customers, which for which a lot of text was used. So identified a couple of use cases they want to know more about and data mine the information that was reported against you know, certain actions that were performed in the system. So HANA is a great tool for that as well. And this is something that we're seeing as well with customers, that they're really looking at it from a repetition perspective. They're looking at a framework, or to install a framework through which different ideas that they want to evaluate further from a use case perspective, bounce it around from a technology and feasibility perspective, and really then bring it into the pipe and try to you know, build a solution on the HANA platform. So the investment is there, you have the strategic platform in place, and then it's a matter of identifying the use cases that bring the value that HANA can bring to them, really HANA being an enabler rather than a constraint. Next slide. Same thing for this next use case is a situation whereby also HANA was used from a platform perspective, and this client, relatively local to the Bay Area, also in high tech, is using HANA in combination with Hadoop and Sybase. So also here, complementary technologies with the integration, the native integration that is available, they can really complement and leverage the initial investments that have already taken place. Next slide. To extend what I mentioned earlier in terms of mobile apps use of HANA Live, so Fiori is a product from SAP that fits within the overall user experience. It's fairly quick to implement, gives a quick ROI and real value to different lines of business. On the HANA platform, there are specific apps that they can take advantage of the HANA as a solution itself. But what we're seeing as well is that companies are looking to further expand on functionality more than what standard Fiori apps can provide. And also KPIT has some capabilities in that area to further expand and, for example, integrate the application with aspects such as the camera, GPS, motion detection through signatures, etc. So I'm showing you some examples of custom Fiori apps that were developed and where we're seeing a lot of interest in the market on. Next slide. So overall, these were a couple of samples and some use cases of where companies are seeing needs for it and where they see advantages of using HANA as a platform, and also the out-of-the-box applications, and then using this to initiate a business transformation. This slide gives an overview of our experience in this particular area. What are the various HANA project POCs that we've done? So we can further expand on this if there's an interest in a particular area. Okay. Next slide. So the next section is around the ECC Suite on HANA project at Varian, which Jason and I will co-present. I had the first discussions with Jason sometime in May of 2013 around HANA. What you will hear from Jason is the process of validation that Varian has gone through, validation of the technology, the business value, and also the meticulous process of system integrator selection. Jason, over to you.
Hello. Thank you very much, Hans. Let me give you first a brief overview about Varian Medical Systems. On a daily basis, we treat over 250,000 patients, customers per day, primarily with our oncology products. Our main oncology products exist around radiation therapy, so we build and manufacture linear accelerators, but we're also in the security inspections market where we use high-powered X-rays for cargo screening. And then we also manufacture X-ray products, both your traditional X-ray tubes as well as your newer digital flat panels, most of which are integrated into medical devices. Our 2012 revenues was around $2.8 billion. This last fiscal year, we were just above $3 billion. We've got 6,500 employees globally, and we have manufacturing sites scattered throughout the world with major hubs in North America, China, and several sites in Europe. Next slide, please. What I want to briefly do on this slide is kind of highlight our SAP landscape a bit to give you an understanding of why we are looking at Suite on HANA. But what you'll see here, just by looking at some of the vertical silos as well as some of the horizontal tracks, is we have almost every single SAP module that SAP offers. Starting out with order cache, we have SD along with variant configuration and project system. All of that is integrated together. That then flows into our manufacturing tracks with production planning, materials management, plant maintenance. We do have a full suite of the quality applications, QM, EC, that's engineering control, ETQ, and then followed by service management, both your ECC service management and CRM from SAP. And then you'll see on the HR side, we have traditional HR applications from SAP, but we've also integrated that with SuccessFactors. Going along the horizontal tracks, you'll see the full suite of the engineering applications. From accounting, you'll see the accounting and controlling, your traditional FICO as well as COPA. And then we have a pretty complete business intelligence suite, BW, BobJ, BPC, as well as ClickView. So the reason why we were interested in first evaluating HANA is we traditionally have performance issues with our ECC environment. A lot of that is due to some of the complex integration that we have between our different modules. And as you can see, we have quite a few modules that do get integrated together. Next slide, please. So through this presentation, there's two key steps that we're going to kind of highlight. The first step is the proof of concept that we did with the folks at SAP Labs on HANA, and this was really the trigger for us to start to investigate and really push forward in acquiring Business Suite on HANA. The next track you're going to see that we discuss will be the selection process that we did for identifying a system integrator for our Suite on HANA implementation. Next slide, please. So this is the actual use case itself that we used when we first partnered with SAP Labs probably 18 to 20 months ago. We have what's called a revenue forecasting batch job, and in our particular business environment, we will take an order for a linear accelerator, which is used for cancer treatment, and typically 18 months later, we'll deliver that product because the customer has to build a hospital, a bunker. There's a lot of radiation safety licenses and qualifications that the customer also needs to acquire. So we have quite a long lead time for our products to be delivered, which is great, but also can be challenging when you're trying to forecast revenue and there's delays with the hospital construction. But we have a revenue forecasting job that pulls in key dates from project systems as well as our sales order. It pulls in invoicing information, it pulls in manufacturing information, it pulls in revenue allocation per product line based upon different profit centers. And all of this is put into a revenue forecasting report, which helps our team forecast revenue. So as certain dates get pulled in or pushed out, we can look at what's the implication to our revenue as we look to report that to Wall Street. So for this particular job, it has a very heavy demand on ECC, but then it also does integrate into our BI environment. There's 4 key aspects for this particular job. There's the delta extraction, which is done in ECC, and what that is it first identifies what are all of the changed sales orders, changed delivery notes, updates to project system, any dates that have been changed from a manufacturing standpoint, and it looks at every single impact to an order, and it takes all those delta changes. Once it identifies the delta changes, we'll go through and reprocess those delta changes and update our backlog source table, which is kind of like a buffer table or a staging table. From there, we export that information to SharePoint via an interface, and our BI environment will pick that up from SharePoint and bring that into the BI revenue forecasting tool. Now, this job typically runs from 3 to 4 hours. However, during quarter end, when we have a spike in changes, that job duration can jump up to 5 to 6 hours, which unfortunately is the absolute worst time to see a spike in the job duration. Additionally, adding more complexity to the issue is this is a global team. So we have a team of employees that forecast revenue in Hong Kong, in the UK, and here in North America. So this extended job run impacts their ability to perform their job. And then lastly, due to the long duration of the job, we're limited on how often we can run this job. Right now we run it twice a day. Ideally, we'd love to run it 3 times a day. At the end of each geographical day, we would like to update the backlog source tables, push the data into BI. But if we do that, it means that some of the users in the different geographies can't use the tool. When we are running these batch jobs, part of the tool has to go offline. So that's been a major pain point for the users because it actually prevents them from doing their job. Next slide, please. And so here is a picture of the different steps and the time duration it takes to run these jobs. Again, you'll see the delta extraction, processing the deltas, the SharePoint interface, and the extraction to the BI source tables. That would take typically 2 to 3 hours depending on the number of delta changes. There's an integration to the first layer of our BI process, which would take 30 minutes, and then the final transformation in BI would take an additional 60 minutes. Now the goal here was really to get this entire process down to the 5 to 10 minute mark. What we did with the POC, we were able to get 2.5 to 3 hours down to 4 minutes. And that's really what the goal of the POC was. As we expand our footprint and deploy HANA in our BI environment, we hope to take that remaining 60 minutes down to 1 minute. So a total runtime shrinkage from 4 hours down to 5 minutes. For this particular proof of concept, SAP Labs used the sidecar approach with real-time data replication via SLT. And then we did quite a bit of ABAP code optimization where we removed code from the revenue forecasting report at the ABAP layer and put that down at the HANA database layer as SQL script. Next slide, please. So here's the conclusion for the proof of concept. We took Varian's most complex, most onerous batch job, and we shrank it down from 3 minutes to 4 minutes. The business value of this, it allows the revenue forecast team to really operate in a global manner with real-time data. We're now able to replicate this data 5 to 10 times per day, where previously we were only able to do it twice per day. And during that time period of a 3-hour batch job run, 2 hours of that 3-hour batch job, users were not allowed to access the tool in BI, so it really inhibited their ability to perform their daily tasks. So now the team is fully productive, and there's no technical limitations preventing them from using the revenue forecasting tool in BI. Now, when you ask ourselves, why did we purchase Suite on HANA rather than continuing to use the sidecar approach, there's a few things that factored into that particular question. First, the sidecar solution was very compelling. It worked great for this particular proof of concept, but we found enough business value to move our entire ECC suite onto HANA. And then you might ask us, well, why didn't we start with BI first and put that onto HANA? Right now, BI performance is pretty good. The users have been very happy with the performance of BI, but there's a lot of frustration, a lot of pushback in regards to the performance of ECC. And as I mentioned earlier, we have a lot of SAP modules with a lot of complex integration. So if you look at, for example, a sales order, by the time you create your sales order, use Variant configuration and have that integrated into project systems, when you hit save, sometimes it can take up to 5 minutes to actually save that order. So from a pain point, the general population of users have been very frustrated with the performance of ECC and have been pretty happy with the performance of HANA now that we've migrated onto HANA. So that was why we chose to move to Suite on HANA. Next slide.
Good, thank you, Jason. Let me just briefly mention a little bit of the scope items for the project itself. So we started off with ECC 6.0 Enhancement Pack 6, which was upgraded to version 7. This was a technical upgrade only, no functional changes at this point. We did a migration of the database itself from Oracle to HANA. That was only done for ECC, not for some of the other applications, business suite applications that were in the landscape that Jason was showing earlier. We performed the HANAtization of the different RISEFs, and I'll expand on that a little bit later in the presentation. But there was no code push down, no further optimization done for those custom objects. There were also some other aspects changed from a OS perspective, from Unix to Linux, and some other elements as well. But from a technical perspective, the items that I just mentioned are key. And obviously, validation is an important aspect as well. The validation testing that had to take place of HANA and the HANA installation. Jason, back to you.
Thank you. Next slide, please. So here are some of the challenges we face specifically on the hardware side. First, the hardware costs when you're looking at an in-memory appliance can run you 2x times more expensive than your traditional SAP hardware. We've always been an IBM shop. We're currently on the Power 7s. But to refresh our environment, it was a little over 2 times more expensive due to the in-memory requirements for HANA. Additionally, adding to that cost, SAP does not allow virtualization on HANA for a production environment, so that further increased the demand for larger footprints from a hardware standpoint. Second, there's very limited vendors who can actually support a 2 terabyte system. Our database right now was 1.6 terabytes back in November. I believe it's up to 1.9 now. Even with compression, we had to go with a 2 terabyte HANA appliance. And then last, the Ivy Bridge technology was not available at the time that we were going through our vendor selection from a hardware standpoint. It has since been released and it is now available, but that was one of our challenges that we were facing. We wanted to wait as late as we could to hopefully take advantage of Ivy Bridge, but unfortunately we couldn't. There are also some financial considerations that played to our move for Suite on HANA. Our end goal is actually to eliminate our Oracle runtime license for the database maintenance fee. So that would include removing all of our SAP applications from the Oracle database. That means putting BI and ECC onto HANA, as well as moving CRM, GRC, GTS, and some of the other SAP applications to the ASE database. So that would completely eliminate Oracle from our landscape, eliminating the Oracle database maintenance fee. Next slide, please. Now, as we were going through our hardware selection, we have our own in-house data center, but we are always looking to push applications and hardware to the cloud. We were looking for originally a co-location environment where we could put our IBM servers in a off-premise type of data center. Unfortunately, the cloud was roughly 2.5 times more expensive. We did look at the SAP cloud as well as co-location environments, but unfortunately it was simply too expensive at the time. We did, however, have over 40 meetings with SAP, IBM to nail down the exact configurations which you see below. From a box standpoint, we have 1 4 terabyte systems for our development environment and 2 project environments with 80 cores. We have a 2 terabyte system with 80 cores for our QA environment, 2 terabytes with 80 core for our production environment, and the same configuration for our high availability failover environments. Next slide, please. Now that we identified that we wanted to move forward with Suite on HANA and we had our hardware vendor selected, the next step was to move forward and select a solution integrator. And this was really a challenge in the sense that when you go to different trade shows and hear vendors speak, everyone says that they're an expert on HANA. Everyone says that they have a dedicated center of excellence for HANA, but when you ask them how many times that they've actually done a Suite on HANA implementation, very few vendors can actually raise their hand. So this was a challenge for Varian to find a knowledgeable vendor to work with. So we went through a pretty detailed vendor selection process. What we did was we did a database export of our ECC SAP instance from Oracle. We saved it on a portable hard drive. We gave that to 4 different vendors, and we requested that they take our export, import it into their HANA lab, upgrade that to version 6.16, and then migrate the database from Oracle to HANA. In doing that, we also requested that they do some additional homework and identify what all of the custom objects need to be what we refer to as HANAtized, meaning that requires some sort of code modification to run on a HANA database, which is different than your traditional Oracle or row-based store. And then we requested they present us with a detailed project plan with their resources on how they want to staff this project. And we'll go into a little bit more detail in the next slide. This was actually the solution integrator evaluation metrics, and I won't go through each one of these in detail, but you'll see that there's 3 major areas. There's an area of staffing, implementation methodology, and proposal. So on the staffing side, we wanted to know specifically what was the on-site versus offshore model, how many of your resources will be on-site versus offshore. We had a consultant quality check, so we made the vendors submit resumes for each of the resources on the team, and for some of those resources we had already been working with them through the proof of concept phase. The quality of the on-site leadership or project management, the availability of bench resources to augment the project as required, general domain knowledge on HANA, support from the vendor executive leadership team, and what we mean by that is how much pull or support would we get from the executive leadership team, and how closely can they work with SAP should we have any challenges with this implementation. We wanted a clearly defined vendor staffing plan throughout the project, as well as a clearly defined Varian staffing requirements throughout the project. From an implementation methodology standpoint, we wanted a project plan for the implementation. We weren't really looking for a plan with 500 line items, but we wanted roughly around 75 tasks so we can really gauge, do you understand what's really required to implement Business Suite on HANA? We wanted to see detailed information on ramp-up training for the Varian resources. What we found is there's a fair amount of training required, both from the ABAP development standpoint, but also from the basis standpoint. We wanted to make sure that our resources were properly trained throughout this project. Transport governance model, and then unique tools or utilities for implementation. And Hans will actually demo one of these later on that KPIT has come up with, but a lot of the different vendors have their own unique tools that assist with the implementation. So we wanted to see what value add each of these tools would provide. Validation testing experience and the use of HPQC. We're in the medical device space, so any change to our SAP landscape needs to go through a proper validation process. The RICEIF, or Custom Object Hanatization proposal, we wanted a detailed breakdown of every single custom object that needed to be touched, as well as why did it need to be touched, so that we can ensure that the different solution integrators were properly staffing our project and they had a clear vision on the amount of work that was required to take our custom code and make that work in the HANA environment. Then lastly, the proposal itself, the quality of the proposal, the presentation, the flexibility and agility of the vendor, and I think that's very critical, specifically agility. We've come back multiple times with KPIT, and we've had them make some changes to the project plan, bring on additional resources as we've expanded the scope in certain areas, and they've been able to very quickly adjust to our request. Questions from the vendor. We had some vendors that asked very, very good questions, very thought-provoking questions, while other vendors asked questions that we felt they really should know the answer to. So that was one way we were grading the vendors. And then the timeliness of the database imports. Some vendors struggled to do the imports, while other vendors were able to do that quite easily. And then last but not least, clearly defined breakdown of cost for the upgrade, the migration, the rights of cleanup, as well as hardware, if the vendor was involved in providing hardware. Not all vendors were. Next slide, please. So at the end of that very detailed solution integrator process, we ended up shortlisting 4 different vendors: SAP, IBM, Wipro, and KPIT. There was, as I mentioned, an RFP that went out. The final selection was KPIT, and that was primarily based upon the quality of resources, the relationship they have with SAP, the KPIT HANA toolkit that Hans will showcase in just a few minutes, as well as their previous HANA project experience. Next slide, please.
Good. Thank you, Jason. So to elaborate a little bit on the approach that was taken, I want to give you some background of the activities that were performed. But maybe let me just first start where we are on the project. So at this point, we're progressing quite well. We're hitting the milestones set forth, and we're on track to go live over the weekend of May 10th and 11th. We're performing user acceptance testing at this point and are about 90% complete. While it's still a little bit early to give you any formal feedback on performance improvements, and maybe Jason will further expand on that a little bit towards the end of the session when we talk about business transformation and next steps. But we did get some positive feedback during the UAT cycle in terms of improvements that were observed. So in terms of specific activities that were performed, and to break it down a little further, and you can build up a slide as well, Abhishek. So we look at the HANAization of the code that was done in the early stage, and I'm going to run actually the KPIT HANA Optimizer in demo mode for a couple of minutes to showcase you what is available out of the box. We have the upgrade, the data migration itself, and then validation, which is very critical. And the above bar gives an indication in terms of effort that was spent across the entire time span. In the interest of time, I'm going to go a little faster over the remaining slides until we get to the actual demo. So if you can go to the next slide. Okay. So this is an overview of some of the tools that we have for HANA projects. So in essence, expanding upon the SAP provided templates, accelerators, and cookbooks based on our experience and some of the sample use cases that I mentioned. I'll specifically zoom in on the HANA Code Inspector. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay. So as mentioned earlier, it is important to review the custom codes to ascertain that all the coding that is taking place is still supported by HANA, that the results that you get on a HANA database are not different from a functional perspective, and there's also no performance degradation. So within this KPIT HANA Optimizer, we've bundled a set of programs that are used to validate the code, the ABAP code, according to a number of rules. Then the output that is presented is that's presented through what we call SAP List Viewer function with integrated data access to really fetch all the code lines from those objects based on the validation against those rules. And in that way, we can present all the information in a comprehensive and user-friendly manner, whether the objects are active or inactive, whether the syntax of code was adhered to, whether there's any code breaks or performance degradation. So this is what we went through during the POC itself, and also subsequently in the actual project. there were about 2,600 custom objects and over 1 million lines of code that we reviewed through these programs. So what I would like to do is quickly run the recorded demo, giving you some insights on what this tool is about and also the rules itself that we're checking against. So Abhishek, if you make me the presenter. Just a moment. So the utility in question, like I said, it consists of a set of programs. Some were already created by KPIT before the HANA technology came into play, some of which were done at a later time. They created specifically for HANA. We separate out aspects such as the analyzer, which is a review of the ABAP coding and provides a list of suggestions per client standards. This relates to aspects such as declaring variables, constants, using field symbols, naming conventions, etc. Then there is the system diagnostics check, where we check the underlying appliance and provide a technical summary of the version, database size, etc. that helps us from an analytics perspective. The custom object summary, which is a utility that provides an overview of the various custom objects and presents those to the foreground. Because as an existing SAP customer, you probably have a lot of code in your system. You may not have it all documented in full, so this helps in that sense. The runtime analysis tool that provides a summary of any existing and also projected runtimes for programs and dialog processing, and really breaks it down into its various sub-processes. For example, at the database level, application server level, etc. And this utility will be used in the determination of which programs or custom code to consider for code push down to the database and where business value can be achieved through HANA. So let me run the demo itself of the HANAization function and give you some further breakdown and insight of what is the output that we're getting from the specific tool. So as I mentioned, it looks at a set of 7 HANA rules. This was shown on the slide previously. Extended beyond the functionality and insight that SAP provides by a tool. So here we're showing the output in individual tabs. We're also making a recommendation of what the recommendation is to change the code itself for a particular object, and give some statistics around how many objects need to be adjusted. So it gives an indication of effort, what to expect during the project itself. So that prepares some data in a variant that we can run against. Let me complete it. And here's some further information around those, specifically on those 7 rules. So the 7 rules in question are, that's what we're checking against. The first 5 rules that you see on the screen are primarily for optimization for performance. These do not change the result of the outcome itself, whereas the last 2 are more must-have, must-dos for HANA database. Let me explain some of these rules. So if you look at specifically rule number 5 from this screen, which is keep the load away from the database. So what this means is when reading data from an internal table, it's advisable to use the binary search. All the records, required records of the database should be selected in one go rather than going back and forth. So the result is come back of the query itself. You have the 7 rules split up per different tabs. The object lines are available. Program line where a change needs to be made is listed as well. And we're making a proposal for a change. That's the way you see that the data is presented for a custom object or a specific number of objects that you want to run this against. That's in essence the program that was used during the POC and what we're using as well during the project itself, and gives a good overview of what needs to happen in the system as well as continuous checks in the future. So this is one of the programs that we have available in our toolbox for HANA-specific deployments. If you can take control back. So a couple of critical success factors. I won't go into the details of it, but just to reiterate the point that Jason was making in terms of train your team, I think that's very critical. Make sure that you assess what is needed to train your basis, your BI, and your ABAP developers, because there will be a change in moving on to a HANA platform. You want to make sure that your team is trained to support the system, but also to use HANA as a platform for future business transformation. It's truly a journey that you're starting on. Initially, you may use a system integrator for help doing the initial conversion, but later on you want to continue with the business transformation down the road. Next slide, please. Okay. So if I may continue, Jason, for a moment, in the interest of time. So there is also, that was the approach that was taken for Varian as well. So initially going with the transformation of the database itself, and then later on we would look at individual areas where code pushdown would take place, as well as using HANA as that platform for which other benefits can be achieved. What we're seeing is, you start off with the HANA database migration, then you look at the elimination of other Oracle databases within the business suite for use of Sybase. Take advantage of HANA Live and the way Fiori apps can be deployed with real live data. BW on HANA is another area that we're seeing some opportunities around. And there's also obviously the analytics of structured and unstructured data, such as machine data analytics, that is of interest. So it's truly a number of areas, a number of possibilities that HANA brings once the platform has been installed. Next slide. I'll go fairly quickly through the next few slides to allow some time for questions. Next slide, please. So in terms of next steps, and you can skip these two. In terms of next steps, think of the HANA platform as an enabler rather than a constraint from an IT perspective. How do you start on this journey? What we're seeing is that there's an interest in the market, but companies may not always know how to start. Well, invite us for a conversation. Let us come over for a free HANA assessment, have a discussion with you as a business leadership or on the IT side to discuss what is the underlying business challenge, help develop with you the use case, and let that be involved into a POC. In other aspects, if you're willing to share some of your data, whether it's from a social media perspective or whether it's machine data or text, we can help you do an analysis on it and help you build that business case. This is typically the approach that is taken from the initial identification that there may be an opportunity or business value till the actual deployment. Next slide. So between now and Sapphire, which is a major event, there are a couple of touch points that have been lined up. One is the user group for Northern California in San Jose, where we'll be presenting a number of other use cases, and there's an opportunity to meet and further discuss if there is an interest, as well as at Sapphire itself. Next slide. So also at Sapphire, we'll be presenting a number of use cases, more expanding on the Varian project. There's an opportunity to further discuss this also live with Jason itself, or you can meet us for the networking event at Tommy Bahamas on Tuesday. Okay. With that, I'd like to thank you for your attendance to the webinar. I hope the information shared was insightful, and through the Varian ECC and other HANA use cases, the potential of the business value and IT enablement through HANA has been demonstrated. I'd also like to thank SAP for their support on various HANA initiatives and in promoting this webinar. I will now open up the session for any questions from the audience.
Well, Hans, thank you for that. Yeah, we do have a couple of questions here, and before diving into those, I would again encourage if anyone has questions, you can use on your attendee panel, there's a hand icon. You can click on your hand icon to raise your hand, or you can address a question to us in the questions panel, again in the GoToWebinar app. So that said, Hans, there's a question from Torsten, and Torsten wants to know, how do you position BobJ versus ClickView Is QV accessing any of your HANA data?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the last portion of the question?
Is QV or ClickView accessing any of your HANA data? How do you position BobJ versus ClickView?
So ClickView is in use at Varian at the moment, so it's pulling data from the underlying tables, and we definitely see also performance improvements there as well. Is the question related to the use of HANA Live or the way the database is accessed, or is there an opportunity to elaborate a little bit on the question, or maybe you can take this offline?
Okay. Okay. I mean, if that if that helps, Torsten. Otherwise, if you want me to unmute your line, I can. You can click on the hand icon and you can continue the conversation. While we do that, there's another question, Hans. This is from Sudan, and he's asking, what have been the challenges in migrating from legacy databases to HANA database? And this is for you as well, Jason.
Well, from a technical standpoint, there hasn't been too many challenges that we've faced specifically as we migrate from Oracle to HANA. It's really been a larger challenge from the validation standpoint, as well as massaging all of our existing SAP code itself to, as we refer to as, HANA-tizing it. But if you're a fairly vanilla SAP shop, you should be able to migrate from whatever database you're currently on right now with SAP to HANA.
Okay. Okay, if that helps, Susan. So we have another question from Steve Francis, and Steve is asking, how is Varian dealing with disaster recovery since HANA does not yet provide incremental backup capabilities?
So we partner with IBM, and again, we have a separate disaster recovery box, but we also have a disaster recovery initiative with IBM out of their Boulder, Colorado office, and we have full DR with them. Varian has our particular data center in Palo Alto, California, which everyone knows the Bay Area can be subjective to earthquakes, so that's why we have a full offline backup with IBM out in Boulder, Colorado.
Okay. So he asked, are you transferring the full 2 terabytes of data each time?
That actually I wouldn't be able to answer. That's more of a basis question, but if you want to get the name of the individual, I'm happy to follow up with our basis team and find out and share that with them. Okay. Okay, yeah, I think Steve does want to follow up on that. So thanks again. Thank you so much, Jason, for that, for those answers. Okay, I think, is there anything else? I see a hand raised. I believe Venkata wants to ask a question. Venkat, just hang on. I will unmute your line in just a second. Venkat, can you hear us now?
Yeah. Thanks, Jason and Hans. I have a question. If you're using SLT versus, I'm explaining a lot, I'm sorry. If you use SLT versus what we have as a normal extractor, does it make a difference in all your process chain and all those type of things, or do you have to redo the entire process chain because of SLT?
I'm sorry, Venkat. I think unfortunately the line is very muffled. Is it possible?
I know, I'm not able to hear it.
You can type it out as well if you'd like, and I can then transfer it on to Jason and Hans.
Okay, I'll do that. I don't know why it's so muffled.
Okay, thank you. And sorry about that.
So Hans, if you want, I can take this question.
Please, Srinivas. It was a little difficult for me to hear the question, but if you did hear it, please try to answer.
Yeah. So I think the question was the difference between SLT versus the BW loads, right? So the BW loads, after you actually migrate your ECC system onto HANA, BW, there is no change in the process chains. You will be able to directly load. There should not be any change. SLT is again a different kind of a load process, right? It is a sidecar option. So that's a different process for loading data. So the BW loading from ECC on HANA, there's no change on BW side.
Okay. Thanks, Srinivas. Yeah, I don't think there's a follow-up there, so it looks like, I think that looks like it answers the question there. You let us know. Okay, I think Venkata is asking again, so let me see. Venkat, I've unmuted your line. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think he's on the right track. The only question is the follow-up question is, so if you're doing SLT, do we have to redo all our processes, the loading procedures, everything, or how does that work? Because SLT fields are going to be sitting in BW systems.
Yeah, this I think there's a lot of breaking in between, so I couldn't hear the whole question.
Yeah, Venkat, if you'd like, what I can do is, I can reach out to you in an email, and then maybe I can set up a one-on-one conversation for you with Srinivas and Jason or Hans, and then maybe you can we can kind of, if you'd like, kind of answer this better that way, if that works. Okay. All right, we'll do that. Thank you. Okay. Any other questions that we have? I mean, if anyone would like to ask any more questions, or I think at this point, again, I mean, I think that's all the questions that we've had for the session. So once again, thank you, everyone. Thanks all of you for attending, and again, thanks, Jason. Thank you, Srinivas, and thank you, Hans, for running this presentation. We have been recording this webinar, so we will make the slides and the recording available to you. So once again, thank you all for attending, and I believe I hope you guys, wish you all a good day, and we will get back to you soon with the recordings. Thank you.
Thank you.